Do I need to play Elden Ring from the beginning for a third time? Hey there, guys. All right, today we are watching some more Vati, and I thought, you know what, fuck it. Let's get into one of these kinds of videos. The Elden Ring's new story trailer is hiding something. Well, of course they are. It's cryptic as fuck. I watched it. I'm very confused. I have no clue what the fuck is happening in that. I have no clue what the story is supposed to be. If this video does really well, or really any of my Elden Ring videos start to do really well, I might consider going back. I have to go kill Moog because I didn't do it in my playthrough because after I killed Melania, I just wanted to be done with the game, and so I went and did that stuff. Never killed Moog. Moog and the big dragon, the toughest dragon fight, I think are the only two boss fights I did not do. I mean, there are some of the boss fights of the what you call it, the things that like teleport you or whatever the fuck, those circles. There were a couple of those that I didn't do, but in terms of the big bosses, the only ones I did not do were Moog and I don't even know its name, but Dragon. Those are the only two I did not do. But yeah, so if an Elden Ring video reaction of mine does like super well, so that I can afford to buy the DLC because I don't have money. I need money incentive. I'm broke right now. I'm struggling. I'm trying to find a job. It hard. That's shit y'all don't need to hear. Yeah. So yeah, if you guys want to share this, leave a comment, whatever. Tell me my opinion is dumb. Go for it. All it does is help out the video, I think. Or at least that's what YouTube says. I don't quite trust YouTube with what they say though, and how like it actually is supposed to work. That's a tangent for another thing. Elden Ring's new story trailer is hiding something. Let's hear Vati's theories.
Everything in this trailer makes so much sense.
Huh?
Is probably what I'm gonna say in about a month when the DLC is out. When we look back, this trailer will explain everything, but right now, I've got so many questions, especially about this scene in particular. Here,
Marica?
we're being teased with what is clearly one of the most important events in this universe, and while the truth is right in front of us,
Smash.
it's impossible to make complete sense of it yet. They're taunting us. I hate
Ronnie.
it. I love it. Let's break it down.
Mother
So
Ronnie.
this trailer comes in 3 parts. There's the beginning, where gold arose and shadow was born. Then we see the war that followed, with Mesmer reducing a city and its citizens.
That looks like Landell. What else could it be?
To ash. Finally, we see Miquella nearer the current age, and he's been preaching a hidden truth about the beginning to his followers.
Miquella the Kind spoke of the beginning. The seduction and the betrayal. An affair from which gold arose. And so too was shadow born.
To start, this is Queen Marica. The bracelet and these armbands, they're an exact match for her jewelry.
Smash. America, if you need a third husband, I'm still available.
In this piece of artwork. But what is happening here? The first shot we see is Marica pulling what looks like hair from what looks like a corpse. The hair seems easy to explain. I think these are runes of the Elden Ring. Compare these threads to the ones that you see in this cinematic, where the Elden Ring was being repaired. This is Marica's hammer, and its description reads, "The hammer partially broke upon shattering the ring, becoming splintered with rune fragments." And And obviously, these threads are very much the same as the rune threads here, so I think Marica is essentially looting runes from a corpse, maybe somewhat similar to what we do in the actual game. Please bear in mind that from this point forward, a lot of this is speculation. However, even if this speculation is
theories,
wrong,
boy.
I think this is still a really good opportunity to talk about and become familiar with concepts that will likely show up in the Land of Shadow one way or another. So yeah, here goes. I don't think these are just any runes, nor do I think this is just any corpse. The thing this mass first reminded me of was the attire of the Godskin enemies. It's really similar in color tone, and the thick folds really remind me
Yeah, I can see it.
of skin and fat. What's more, we can see horizontal stitching at the edges, which brings to mind the Godskin Stitcher, which is a weapon that references the creation of the Godskin attire, which is peeled and then stitched together from Godskin. And considering Marica's hand alone is bloody, it's not bloody further up. Clearly, she's reaching into something visceral. But what is she doing here? Obviously, it's too
She reached up someone's bum. No, I regret saying that.
early to say for sure, but I do want to comment specifically on the shape these threads are making. It's being pulled into a downward arc, which is a really potent symbol as it relates to the Elden Ring. So there
See, I even noticed that. I'm smart.
are two downward arcs on the Elden Ring. One is here at the bottom, which is explicitly a rune arc. It's a basin in which the blessings of the Elden Ring pool. But the more relevant arc, I think, is here at the top. This arc creates a symbol that is iconic to Marica. It's seen on her scar seal and in her crucifixion at the end of the game, and now again in the trailer here and at the end of the trailer.
Okay, I can't believe I'm gonna say. Do I need to play Elden Ring from the beginning for a third time and really try to focus? Like, I thought I was focusing hard on the story. First time. Oh, I don't know. Because, like, again, I have my issues with how the story is told, right? Because it's not, this form of storytelling is just not my cup of tea. It's too much on the, as I've talked about in previous fantasy author reacts videos, especially in the Elden Ring Dark Souls reactions. One thing I learned in creative writing class, or at least this was where it was told to me for the first time, was storytelling goes on a line, right? And every story falls somewhere on this line. On one end of the line is you have very kind of you have stories that require a lot of work on the side of the reader to understand what is happening, right? And Elden Ring, From Software storytelling, Miyazaki storytelling tends to fall very far on this side, because that's what he likes to tell. And then on the other end, you have stories that don't really require much effort. More often, you see, not fully on this side, but you see them a little bit over halfway, gravitating closer to the stories tend to gravitate more towards the side where the reader has to do not too much work, not a lot of work, but they're, it's still pretty close to the middle, I would say, where stories tend to fall. Miyazaki likes to fall very far on this side a bit. And that's just not my cup of tea. I feel like it shouldn't be a wrong thing to say that, but I guess people get very upsetty spaghetti with me talking about the stories that I just enjoy consuming. Like, that's my preference, and that's all the preference to the stories I like to write. Guys, guess what? You're not going to enjoy every author's story, because every author likes to tell stories. Like, once authors find their voice, they like to, they find their voice. You're not going to like every author's voice, and that's okay. The problem, though, with it is I do believe that largely the audience that I have created here on YouTube, I do believe that most of you are not also the right audience for the stories that I want to tell in novel form, which kind of sucks from a sort of marketing and salesman perspective. I've done a bad job at cultivating the right audience for what I want to end up, for what I would like my career to be. But yeah, um, I mean, my first story that I wrote, you'll hear other authors say this as well. I remember I watched a podcast with Brandon Sanderson and his friend Dan Wells. They were talking about this. I watched this like yesterday. I think was when yesterday, 2 days ago. One of their newer podcasts episodes where they were talking about their first stories and how they were just blatant ripoffs of some of a story that they really enjoyed. My first story, I've talked about this before. My first story, I've relooked at. It was such it was just a complete Game of Thrones ripoff. It was just Game of Thrones with different names and slightly different theme. But it was very much just a bad Game of Thrones copy. And now that I've found my voice, right, like my stories are not that. They're not ripoffs of other from other stories. They are my voice. Of course, though I do take inspiration from other things, but yeah. Is that at all related to this? No, not really, but it's just saying like authorial voice one changes over time. Opinions can change over time. Internet. That's a thing that's allowed. Um and also you're not going to, there are just stories you're not going to like just because it's just a form of the way the narrative is told is just not something you vibe with. And that's what's happening here for me. But also, like, going back to what I was saying, the lore itself of Elden Ring, I find it so fucking interesting. I do want to understand it. So I have this weird battle raging inside my head of like, oh wow, this is so fucking cool. I want to experience this in game. And then I remember my time playing the game and I'm like, I'm fucking lost and confused and I don't like it. So it's just like,
Trailer as well, with the gold flowing between the two shadow trees. Something that the YouTuber Quailag talked about very early on is that Marica's seal seems to be a subversion of the Rune of Death. You would have seen the Rune of Death after defeating Malekith. It's something that was once a part of the Elden Ring, delivering a destined death to all until Marica the Eternal removed it and sealed it away. According to Enya, this rune was plucked from the Golden Order upon the Golden Order's creation, and indeed Marica's age became defined by its defiance of death in all things. So it is that I wonder if the Rune of Death has anything to do with the subverted symbol of Marica we see here. Understanding the Rune of Death is important also because it has a lot to do with the Godskins. Now, I'm at risk of going too far down a tangent that could be built on a false premise here, but if this is Godskin we see in the trailer, then it really could have huge implications for what's happening in this scene. So let's entertain the idea that this is Godskin just to see where this takes us. The leader of the Godskin nobles and the Godskin apostles was the Glowmide Queen, who, like Marica, was an Imperium, someone chosen by the Two Fingers as a candidate for godhood. And items describe how she was defeated long ago by Malekith, who was Marica's shadow. So essentially she was defeated by Marica. However, the exact nature of this clash is really unclear. We don't know if the Glowmide Queen and Marica were equals or rival Imperiums, or how or if control of the Elden Ring was split between them. But we do know that in the end, destined death was sealed, and the true power of the Glowmide Queen's black flame was lost. Marica had won. So one kind of insane piece of speculation is that this body could actually be the Glowmide Queen's, given the Godskin and the rune and the war that Marica won against her in the beginning. But this theory about this being the Gloam-eyed Queen is entirely built upon the premise that this lump is Godskin, and that premise might be false. Of all the characters we know in Elden Ring, I do think she's the most likely candidate, but to be honest, I actually think it's more likely that this is a character or a thing we've never seen before. It's a sort of tempting impulse with Elden Ring lore to try to explain the story based on what we know, but the truth is that FromSoft are going to introduce a ton of new characters and concepts and names that we've never even heard of before in the DLC, and those are the things that will shape our new understanding of the game. Thus, keep in mind, it's just as likely this could be some old god we've never heard of that Marica took runes or the Elden Ring from. And speaking of claiming the Elden Ring, the soundtrack you can actually hear in this scene is the Elden Beast's soundtrack. The Elden Ring became the Elden Beast, and it's something that we face as we attempt to claim the ring, so maybe that's kind of what Marica's doing here as well. The Elden Beast's theme here sounds...
So are they... Okay, so one of the issues that I did have, like, from a... I didn't like the Elden Beast simply because I felt like there really wasn't any sort of, like, the whole Marica and Radagon thing, that was, I felt like, properly, like, being shown. Was it still my cup of tea? No, but I do believe that, at least for the goals of Elden Ring and its narrative, that it's narrative goals and such like that, I do believe that it properly set the player up to expect, you know, like, for the Radagon confrontation, that sort of thing. I do believe that part of the final fight was set up well. But the transition into Elden Beast, I did not like that. That just felt... I didn't care for... I felt like there was no setup for that. It was just like, we need a big thing for player to fight at end of... We need Radagon to have a phase 2, but we also want Big Beast. That's kind of what it felt like to me. It just didn't feel, at least with what at least the story that I was able to piece together as I was going through my playthrough, the Elden Beast to me just kind of felt like there. Didn't really feel like it served to me a much narrative purpose in the scope of what we were given at the time. Hopefully, maybe with the DLC here, they will be retroactively fixing that. And I'm someone that is okay with retroactively fixing things. I love Star Wars The Clone Wars animated show. I love that show. That retroactively fixed a lot of problems with the prequel trilogy. Now, of course, I was a kid with the prequel trilogy, so I grew up liking the prequel trilogy because the prequel trilogy was made for me, for my generation. I grew up enjoying it, so I didn't really have any issues, but, like, as an adult, looking on this prequel trilogy on its own from a narrative standpoint, and then you add in the Clone Wars helps it a lot. So I am totally cool with things being retroactively fixed when it comes to storytelling. That's stuff that happens. Maybe, like, in the production they couldn't fit some of this lore in, or Miyazaki couldn't figure out how exactly he wanted to fit in lore of the Elden Beast into the narrative being told by the main story of Elden Ring, and so he was like, cut it and hopefully do a DLC with it if, say, the game makes enough money to then let us make a DLC, right? You know, that's kind of my perspective on it right now.
Sounds really distorted, as if it's cutting out. I wonder why that is.
Miquella the Kind spoke of the beginning. The seduction.
We are really
And the
going in depth here
betrayal.
for just this scene.
Seduction and betrayal is certainly par for the course for Marica, who has a history of such things. Renala, in particular, comes to mind. She is a champion who was seduced by Radagon, who is also Marica. Their marriage with Renala settled a war that Marica couldn't win, after which Renala was abandoned by Radagon Marica and left broken. Marica wins again. So I wonder if this seduction and betrayal that the trailer mentions could have been applied to the Glowmide Queen or some other rivals in the past as well. The next line does call it an affair. The wording makes it sound so scandalous.
An affair from which gold arose.
So, could Marica have used Radagon to play that seductive trick twice? For that to be true, Radagon would need to have been one with Marica since the beginning. And actually, Marica's torso is a bit more masculine here than expected.
She do got some serious lats. And you know what? Muscle mommy come to.
Better evidence though here is the hair. If you look closely, you can see a strong reddish tint to Marica's hair, particularly at the back here.
I think, okay, if we're going into that, yes, I agree. It looks like in the light of the sun, once it starts to get into the shadow, it becomes red.
But to be honest, I think it's more likely that the trailer is talking about Marica's seductions and betrayals in a more general sense. The Erdtree and the Golden Order are inherently very seductive concepts after all. It was advertised as an age of endless bounty and endless life, but that was a lie. And the truth...
I'm so curious what the writer's room is like at From Software. That is a writer's room I would actually genuinely love to be a part of, just from a sort of... As me, a writer myself, as someone who wants to just like... I just want to observe how they tackle this, how they come up with like these ideas and stuff. Like that's one thing that really interests me, and one because it's different from how you write, how you approach a novel. Right? You are collaborating in a team to make video game stories, which is a completely different thing than novel writing. But like in regards to From Software and their stories and concepts and stuff like that, I'm just so curious.
Is surely more sinister, clearly. So where is this place? On the border of two worlds, apparently, filled with corpses and viscera. It's almost as if this mountain of corpses is making up some sort of gate. From our perspective, you can see a golden sky within and a gloam-colored sky without, and presumably the reverse would be true if you were to look in from the other side. At first, I thought this dark world might be the land of shadow, and that light world might be the heavens or something like that, and that the lands between could be named the lands between because maybe it grew out of the border of these two places. Is that even possible? Alternatively, this could be the land of shadow, and the lands between could be the golden world beyond. What do you guys think?
I'm leaning more towards what I think is more likely is the second option, though I definitely see if we attribute we could also, what they could go for, it's possible, like especially with how we see the runes here kind of seemingly stretching off either into infinity or to the barrier here. I think the argument could be made that it is possible that with the forging of the Elden Ring, that maybe this is uncovering that with the forging of the Elden Ring itself created the lands between. Sort of creation myth sort of thing.
So
I could see
here
that
comes
possible.
the next crazy theory. What if this towering structure is the Erdtree in its primordial form? It would make sense for the Erdtree to have been grown on some border between worlds. It appears in both worlds, after all, golden in one and shadow in the other. The biggest piece of evidence for this idea is that the primordial form of the Erdtree is also known as the Crucible, where primordial life was blended together. We know that the Crucible is what became the Erdtree's vital energies. Now, we've never seen the physical form of this Crucible, but we do have a few hints as to what it might look like. The first comes from the Gilded Great Shield, which states that the red tinge in the gold coat mirrors the primordial matter that became the Erdtree. There's also a great sword of a Crucible Knight that has a red tint that exemplifies the nature of primordial gold, said to be close in nature to life itself. Lastly, red, mushy root resin shows up at the Erdtree's own roots. And this towering structure does feature a very red blending of life, what with all the viscera here. So could the Crucible literally be a blending of lives that gave rise to the Erdtree? In the end here, all we really know for sure right now is what the trailer literally tells us. And it's that this affair, this beginning, gave rise to gold and shadow, and that a war would follow sometime after.
What followed was a war unseen. One that could never be put to song. A purge without grace or honor. The tyranny of Mesmer's flame.
This part of the trailer is a little bit easier to explain. Here we see Mesmer's forces marching within this castle that we saw disintegrating in the previous gameplay trailer. It's a bloodbath here, and it looks like Mesmer's forces experienced very little in the way of resistance. Perhaps the residents of this place weren't expecting or prepared for a purge at all. Mesmer stands...
I mean, it looks like he's attacking from the center of the place, like he got inside of it and then attacked them
over
from
the
within.
battlefield, directing
sort of
snakes of red-black flame below. If you need to learn more about who Mesmer is, then I recommend you check out our previous news video, which speculates more deeply on his character. But suffice to say, he is a character that is considered to be on equal footing to the other demigods and children of Marica. That's the official quote. And he's almost certainly a child of Marica, given his dialogue in the previous trailer.
Mother, wouldst thou truly lordship sanction in one so bereft of light?
In this new trailer, we see him purging this part of the Land of Shadow, at least, in an act of what they're calling tyranny, presumably on behalf of his mother, who wanted no songs sung about this land or war. Earlier, we speculated that Mesmer might have been specifically a child of Marica and Radagon's union, considering his red hair, and while I still think that's likely to be true, I don't think we speculated on when Mesmer would have likely been born, so let's do that now. As far as we know, Radagon only made his first public...
God, I remember this. I tried fighting this thing. This thing kicked my ass. And then I think I eventually was stubborn, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm not accepting the loss, and so I think I ended up kicking its ass.
appearance in the Leonian Wars.
But it kicked my ass a couple
only
times.
had children with Renala, and then again with Marica after he abandoned Renala. However,
T-pose.
I'm not sure it makes sense for Mesmer to have been born that late in the timeline, since it seems likely the purge took place much earlier in the timeline, at a point that followed the beginning. So what if Mesmer was born outside of wedlock, so to speak? What if Marica Radagon conceived Mesmer on their own ages ago? In this early age, Marica might not yet have had Godfrey to fight her wars for her, but it seems she did have Mesmer. In this context, it might have been a brilliant political play to use Mesmer to usurp the Land of Shadow in his tyranny and then essentially lock him away in this veiled land to rule. Maybe this solved quite a few problems all at once, especially considering how blasphemous Mesmer would have been to Marica's rule in the lands between. Though again, this is just speculation. As expected, the Wicker Men march on Mesmer's side, and will have to fight one, as seen here in the gameplay trailer. A
Oh, great.
recent tweet states, "The sordid sins of war still walk the realm of shadows, even as their victims search fruitlessly for recompense." The brunt of Mesmer's army consists of extremely well-disciplined masked soldiers wielding spears, led perhaps by these knights in black and gold trim. They look a lot like this knight fought in the gameplay trailer. In the next scene, we see the Lion Dancer smashing aside two of Mesmer's soldiers before it confronts Mesmer himself. In the shot to follow, we see the flame he's conjuring in response to this assault, followed by three large, impaled bodies. As you might already know, the Lion Dancer is actually made up of three bodies, and so the implication here is that these are the three bodies with long cloaks that were puppeteering the Lion Dancer in the previous scene before Mesmer killed and impaled them. Now's a good time to note that many on the receiving end of Mesmer's purge have what look like omen horns. The creature on the stairs has them too, and its robes look a lot like the ones worn by these enemies in the previous trailer, who also have horns. As discussed at length in previous videos, those with omen horns can be linked to the primordial crucible, and the crucible talismans make it clear that horns and other such aspects were once considered signifiers of the divine. It seems this was a culture and an idea that Marica wanted to stamp out, since she probably had new ideas about what should be considered heavenly. This is probably why the almost genetic reappearance of omen horns during her era was seen as a bad omen, to her at least. Maybe these horns were an element of the truth, hidden beneath the surface, coming back to haunt her. The only one without horns that we see on the receiving end of Mesmer's flame is seen here, a feminine figure who seems to be holding some sort of undulating blade. Is this a spiral weapon, like so many others in Elden Ring, or is it maybe a sort of banner? Anyway, she's the last in this video's long list of atrocities for now. Next, let's talk about Miquella, who seems intent on bringing the truth to light.
Will we be finally meeting Miquella?
And so kindly Miquella would abandon everything.
Is Miquella trapped in the Land of Shadow?
His gold.
So obviously, trailers are lies. There is a twist here. And I think they're hyping up Mesmer to be the big fight. And I don't think he's going to be the ultimate fight. At least that's my tinfoil theory here. And also personally what I would do if I were creating a trailer for a game, right? You're going to hype up one thing to try and then subvert the audience with another. I'm not, Miquella, I think it's possible Miquella could be actually the real endgame fight for this DLC. Because, I don't know, I'm just so untrusting of trailers, especially video game trailers, when it comes to, who you are actually fighting. They almost always lie as to who the final big bad is. Dude, part of me is kind of thinking it might be Miquella, because we killed this whole family.
Golden flesh. His blinding strength. Even his fate. But we are not deterred. We choose to follow.
Okay, yeah, Miquella is in the Land of Shadow. That seems pretty much fucking confirmed here. Okay. Did Melania... What if Melania used Mesmer to trap Miquella? So that she could do whatever fucking plans she was doing for the Lands Between? I know we've talked a little bit that Melania might have been setting things in... one of the theories is that Melania might have set us on our journey to defeat her. Like, it's what she was wanting so that the Two Fingers could be defeated or something like that. One theory. I remember, I think Vati talked about.
Will you walk with us?
One question I'm curious about the answer to in the DLC is, how did Miquella become aware of what happened in the beginning with Marica? My answer for now is that Miquella is quite like Marica in a couple of ways. For one, he's considered to be an Empyrean, with the wisdom, the allure of a god. Maybe he's quite capable of thinking like one. Another similarity is that Miquella literally tried to grow his own Erdtree, watering it with his own blood, since it was a sapling. What if this gave him an insight into how such trees were supposed to grow? And if we're right about this being the crucible, perhaps Miquella realized the sheer amount of blood.
Oh wait, I just realized I was misspeaking before. Not Melania. Not Melania. I was misspeaking. Take that back. Though people are probably going to hear that part and then not at all listen to this part where I say, oops, I realized my mistake. Y'all know what I was meaning.
That would have been required for the Erdtree that already exists. So out of everyone, Miquella could probably figure it out. A few items actually consider Miquella to be a genius, and he's called a prodigy, so his ability to puzzle out the truths of this universe make good sense.
So then I think Queen Marica might have trapped her own son.
In the face of these truths, he abandoned everything. And these sacrifices clearly have a purpose. We don't understand that purpose just yet, but take these scenes for instance. These markings left behind are in the shape of a great rune, something that Miquella would have had, and surely these are Miquella's own great runes that he's leaving behind, presumably for us. At first I thought that you might be able to rest at these, like sites of grace, but in a recent promotional image, it's been revealed that grace still exists in the Land of Shadow. The previous trailer says that Miquella is awaiting his promised lord. That's likely us, though it's possible his followers each believe that it's them, as they're clearly following this hallowed land that Miquella has left behind as well. And here they are, a veritable Band of the Hawk, presented with this uplifting surge of music in the trailer. Miquella's faithful compelled to follow him. Surely all these great NPCs aren't going to suffer horrific, terrible deaths, right?
Yeah,
Right.
not at all.
We've already seen 4 of these NPCs in the previous trailer. There's the knight, this warrior, this tanky guy, and
Probably, I'm thinking this is going to be another situation similar to the Round Table Hold and the people we met in there.
the masked one. Previously, the masked one was actually seen sleeping in what we suspected was a swamp of St. Trina.
Of course, a fucking swamp.
Since then,
yeah.
we've received confirmation from Miyazaki that St. Trina will indeed make an appearance in the DLC. And sure enough, here they are now, in the trailer. St. Trina, presented in the
Oh, that's not Ronnie.
context
Never mind.
of things that Miquella has abandoned.
His golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate.
Considering St. Trina is falling in this scene, holding their arm up to the light, at first glance I assumed that this is the fate that Miquella was leaving behind, abandoning his alter ego. On second thought though, we know that Miquella is abandoning his golden self, so perhaps it's more likely that St. Trina will be all that's left. But since they're making an appearance, I assume that we'll get to the bottom of things. All of this is a lot of speculation, I know. I feel like the closer we get to the truth, the more questions are raised. But hopefully, if nothing else, I think this was an opportunity to refresh our memory of a few things that we should look out for going into the DLC. But what about after the DLC? Well, I've found one other game that I'm interested in playing when it releases in September. It's called Erdtree, The Last Song, and it's
I've
a lot of
seen
fun.
some trailers
The
of
demo
this.
for this game is actually available for free for everyone to try on Steam, Epic Games Store, and PS5 right now, and I highly recommend you check it out and see if this is something that you might like. Now, the devs are the sponsor of this video, but I'm really picky with the Souls-likes I play. You guys probably haven't seen me advertise any others on this channel, so if I'm talking about it, that's generally a good sign. First up, the game is really pretty, like actually gorgeous. It's nice playing a Souls-like game that isn't super grim, and the vibe is just really on point. It takes place in this really unique Mediterranean setting, and the environments are just enchanting, to the point where I actually start to feel quite relaxed playing, even though the game is also a tough Souls-like. As for the combat, it's solid. It's got the dodge system from Bloodborne, it's got the parry system from Sekiro, even the jump from Elden Ring. And there's this great flow to combat where you're incentivized to dodge, but also to get perfect blocks in so that you can build up your enemy's stagger meter and knock them off balance with a critical strike. The thing I like most about the combat, though, are
So kind of a combination of all the other things. We're gonna stop here because we're no longer talking about what we came here to watch. But I have seen clips of this and it looks good. I think I'm gonna wait for more though before looking any deeper into it. That was Elden Ring's new story trailer is hiding something. Wow, my dogs decide to bark right as I'm trying to finish. Lovely, rude. Oh my god, they're really barking. Anyways, I'm gonna keep yapping while they bark. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.